Okay, so imagine this for a moment. A world where the past isn't silent, where the ground beneath your feet is still holding stories we don't fully understand. Because sometimes, history doesn't just tell us what happened. It shows us something we're not sure we were meant to see. Number 10. The Roman Vampire Child. In 2018, archaeologists uncovered a grave in Italy that immediately stood out. Inside, the skeleton of a child, and in its mouth, a large stone, placed there deliberately. The site dates back around 1,500 years, during a malaria outbreak that devastated entire communities. At the time, people didn't understand how diseases spread. Illness felt invisible, unpredictable, almost supernatural. So some believed the dead could return and continue spreading it. To stop that from happening, they took precautions. Bodies were pinned down, weighted, and in rare cases, something was placed in the mouth, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Modern analysis suggests the child had malaria, which means this burial wasn't just unusual, it was a desperate attempt to control something no one could explain. Number 9. The headless Viking burial. Now, imagine discovering not one body, but dozens. In England, archaeologists uncovered a mass grave containing over 50 skeletons. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until they noticed something disturbing. Every single skeleton was missing its head. Nearby, the skulls were found, separated, piled together. Cut marks on the bones showed clear signs of beheading, and not clean ones. Some required multiple strikes, which suggests something chaotic, rushed. These weren't honored warriors. They were likely captured raiders, executed, and buried without weapons, without ceremony. Not to remember them, but to send a message. Number 8. The Stone Age massacre site. But this kind of violence didn't start in medieval times. In Germany, archaeologists uncovered what first looked like scattered bones, but as the excavation continued, the truth became clear. An entire community, men, women, children, all buried together in a chaotic pile. Many skulls showed blunt force trauma. Some victims had been struck multiple times, others attacked from behind. This wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. And one detail made it even more unsettling. Most of the victims were young, which suggests survivors may have been taken. Not everything was left behind. Number 7. The ancient skull wall. Now take that idea and scale it even further. In Mexico, archaeologists uncovered a structure that once seemed almost impossible, a tower made entirely of human skulls. Hundreds of them, part of an Aztec structure known as a tzompantli. For years, historical accounts describing these structures were dismissed as exaggerations. They weren't. The skulls had once been displayed publicly before being embedded into stone. What surprised researchers most was who they belonged to, not just warriors, but also women and children. For the Aztecs, these acts were tied to belief, to balance, to survival, to the idea that sacrifice sustained the universe. From a modern perspective, it feels unsettling, but in its time, it meant something very different. Number 6. The bog bodies. But not every discovery is violent in an obvious way. Some are simply unsettling. Across northern Europe, archaeologists have found bodies that look almost alive. Skin, hair, facial features, preserved for over 2,000 years. These are known as bog bodies. Natural conditions, cold, low oxygen, acidic water, slowed decay dramatically. One of the most famous, Tolland man, looked so real that people thought he was a recent victim, but he lived during the Iron Age. A rope was still around his neck. his last meal still inside him. Many bog bodies show signs of carefully controlled deaths, which has led researchers to a theory. Some of them may have been ritual offerings, not random, not accidental, but intentional acts, tied to beliefs we still don't fully understand. Number 5. The coffins of the Black Death. And sometimes, the horror isn't in how people died, but in how many died at once. In London, construction workers uncovered rows of skeletons beneath the city, mass graves, layer upon layer, victims of the Black Death, a pandemic that killed millions in just a few years. So many died, so quickly, that normal burials became impossible. Bodies were placed side by side, stacked, not out of disrespect, but because there was no time left. DNA later confirmed the presence of the bacteria responsible, but what stood out most to researchers wasn't just the scale, it was the care. Even in chaos, some bodies were still arranged with intention, as if, even at the edge of collapse, people were still trying to hold on to something human. Number 4. The Screaming Mummy. But sometimes, it all comes down to a single face. In the late 1800s, archaeologists opened a tomb in Egypt and discovered a mummy that immediately disturbed everyone in the room. Its mouth, wide open, not calm, not peaceful, but frozen in what looked like a scream. Most mummies were carefully prepared to appear serene. This one wasn't. The body was wrapped in sheepskin, something considered impure. The limbs appeared stiff in a way that may suggest restraint. Historians later connected this figure to a failed conspiracy against Pharaoh Ramesses III. One of the accused may have been forced to take his own life. If that's true, then what we're seeing might not just be a preserved body, but a moment of fear that never ended. Number 3. The Frozen Girl of the Andes. High in the Andes Mountains, archaeologists discovered something almost impossible: a child, perfectly preserved in ice, known as the Luluyaco Maiden. She looks as if she's simply asleep, her posture calm, her expression peaceful, but her story is something else entirely. She was part of a ritual known as Capacocha. Children were selected, honored, and taken high into the mountains. Scientific analysis suggests she was given special food and substances like alcohol in the months before her death, possibly to prepare her, possibly to calm her. Eventually, she was left in the cold, where time stopped. What remains today isn't just a body, it's a moment, frozen between reverence and something far harder to define. Number 2. The handprints of the dead. And then there are discoveries that feel personal. Deep inside ancient caves, thousands of handprints cover the walls. Simple marks, hands pressed against stone, pigment blown around them. But look closer, and something feels wrong. Some are missing fingers, not randomly, repeatedly. At first, researchers thought it was injury, but patterns suggest something else. Possibly ritual, possibly mourning. In some cultures, removing a finger was a way to mark loss, to carry grief physically. If that's true, then these walls aren't just art, they're memory. Each handprint, a message. Each missing finger, a loss. And somehow, they're still here. Number 1. The Neanderthal burials of Shanidar Cave. For a long time, Neanderthals were seen as something distant, primitive, alone. But Shanidar Cave tells a different story. One individual had severe injuries, a damaged arm, possible blindness, conditions that should have made survival impossible, and yet he lived for years after, which means someone helped him, fed him, protected him, stayed. Nearby, traces of pollen were found. Some researchers suggest flowers may have been placed during burial. It's not certain, but if true, then it changes everything, because it suggests something deeply human existed long before we thought. Care, connection, maybe even grief. And suddenly, they don't feel so distant anymore. And remember, the universe doesn't reveal its secrets to those who rush. It reveals them to those who know how to look. Subscribe and keep listening to the silence.